Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 48 of Days Gone By, the review series for Gran Turismo's vintage cars and more dominantly classic car selection. And this particular vehicle is probably one of the more collectible classic sports cars on the game. And it's a vehicle which is featured in one of the earliest dealerships when you click on the purchase car section, so it automatically tends to get a little bit more exposure than some of the other classics because players who are looking through the dealerships will come across the car quite early on. Now, the company isn't a company which I'm a massive fan of, to be completely honest. And the company is, of course, Alpine, or Renault Alpine as it's sometimes known as well, and there are a couple of Alpine models. Probably most people's favourites would be the Vision GT Alpine, for obvious reasons, both of them. These real Alpines, though, do have their uses. I would say predominantly as sports classic collector's pieces. Now, I say collector's pieces about a lot of the classic cars on Gran Turismo, but the reason for that is because that's quite simply what many of them are. They are really good cars to have in a well-rounded classic car collection. They're historically significant, they're nice to look at, nice to cruise around in, maybe have some potential racing use in some cases, but in other cases, such as the Prince Skyline or the Subaru 360 or some others, they're more just about the fun of driving and the fun of owning the car. Now, with Alpine models, they do definitely have that feature, that they make great additions to a classic car collection, but they do also have use, because they are very quick classic sports cars. And as far as French sports cars go, Alpine is pretty much top of the pack when you ask any classic enthusiast. In more modern times you'd probably go to Venturi, especially if you're a long-time Gran Turismo fan such as myself. I would personally love to see Venturi return to Gran Turismo, but for the classic side of things, Alpine is really the dominant force in sports cars from France. And personally, the only Alpine that I'm a real fan of would be, I can't remember the name of the car, but it was their long-tail Le Mans version of essentially the A110, or at least shared some similarities with that car. Now, this particular vehicle, the normal A110, but the premium model, is pretty expensive. It's a 100 grand car, and you do see some people using it. Of the Alpine models, the VGTs notwithstanding, this does tend to be the one that you see the most. For obvious reasons, of course, it's the premium car. Now, we've discussed the A310 before, which is my personal favourite Alpine on the game. It's different, it's quirky, it's oddball. This one I've never been a fan of, and there are two versions of it on the game. There's a premium and a non-premium with some differences between the two. And we will also be featuring the non-premium version later on in this series. Now, the non-premium, straight off the bat, is 40,000 credits cheaper. Now, it's not necessarily quite as good a vehicle in terms of its all-round package. You don't get the detailed interior, you don't get the better visuals on the bodywork, and also you don't get the visual tuning options, some of which you can actually see here with the addition of lights on the car, the different style of lights which you can have, the ducktail rear wing, etc. Now, the question arises, of course, being a classic sports car, among vehicles like the Mercedes Gullwing, the Lotus Europa, the Lancia Stratos, various other pretty quick classic sports cars, certainly very quick in their day, what kind of potential does this car have? Because sometimes vehicles like this, and especially vehicles like the Gullwing and the Toyota 2000 GT, can sometimes turn out to be not just quick, but dominatingly quick under certain circumstances. The Mercedes Gullwing can do over 220 miles per hour, as can the Toyota 2000 GT, and the Toyota actually just makes a great PP-specific racer in general. So is that the case with the Alpine? Is this not necessarily a hidden gem, but is it a gem nonetheless? You'd hope so for 100 grand, so is it? Well, yes and no. It's not a gem as much as a 2000 GT or a Gullwing. It's nowhere near as quick as those cars, especially for top-end performance, but it definitely does have a decent all-round package on offer. Now 100 grand is still pretty ridiculous considering how quick the car is, but at the same time it's understandable why it costs that much. It is historically significant, it's probably the most famous and most loved classic Alpine, and it is a pretty good car. Now, as with all of the other real Alpine models, it's a rear-engine, rear-drive car, and as such, it requires a little bit of a different approach to tuning, and especially to driving, to get the best out of it. Because, of course, when you've got a rear-engine layout, and as such, most of your weight at the back of the car, and then also driving only the rear wheels, well, that means that the front end can and will usually be very light. Not just physically light, but also light in terms of the way it handles. It will have a tendency to float around on the road, and you can definitely feel that in some rear-engine, rear-drive cars more than others. The Roof Yellowbird, for instance, has a tendency to do that, as does the Samba Bus, the Beetle, the Fiat 500, not so much the Subaru 360 due to its super short wheelbase, but some others as well definitely have that tendency. I would say that of all of the rear-engine, rear-drive cars on Gran Turismo, the Alpines suffer from that the most, because they really are light. Now this car's got a 1.6 naturally aspirated engine, and it's a lot lighter than the A310. It only weighs 635 kilos, and that's one of the biggest advantages that this has over the A310, because for power, it's not that much higher. It only has 259 horsepower in comparison to the 253 of the A310. It puts out 185 foot-pounds of torque, 408 horsepower per tonne, which is pretty good, and the PP is probably its main downside. The price is high, but justified. The PP, on the other hand, is way too high. 549 is ridiculously high. It really does suffer from Red Bull Junior syndrome, and it just cannot compete at that level, unfortunately. That being said, however, it's not a bad car by any means. It's just the kind of vehicle that you need to know what you're getting into with. So overall, that's it for this particular review. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.